Good day and welcome to this BalCanis podcast. Today, we are very lucky to have with us a guest, Shafoli Kapur, to discuss about immigration processes, immigration programs, and we will tell you together with Shafoli, we will discuss about one specific immigration program today, the Canadian immigration class. The Canadian immigration class goes under the Federal Skilled Worker Program in Canada. Without further ado, I would like to introduce her, Shafoli Kapur, great presenter that I've come to know. She knows it all, pretty much, in immigration, but I'll let her herself tell us about immigration, about how she came to work in immigration and why does she do it. Shafoli Kapur, welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me join you on this podcast today. It's so funny how we both connected and I'm here today. About myself, so my name is Shafoli Kapur. I am a typical immigrant to Canada myself, immigrated to Canada about 12 years ago from India. Mm-hmm. I entered into entrepreneurship about 10 years ago after having my first child. I didn't want to go back to my 9-to-5 job. I wanted more flexibility. So, I decided that maybe, we, like my husband and I, we should probably venture out into, something of our own. Mm-hmm. And we did. We started our own business of travel in Toronto. Of course, we saw a lot of, hardships, ups and downs. Okay. In the initial years, we also faced a lot of financial hardships, as every entrepreneur does when they, start out.
Especially immigrants.
Exactly. And especially with us was that both my husband and I, we ventured into entrepreneurship together. So it wasn't that one of us was employed and then the other one was doing, no, we both, I don't know what were we thinking, but we both decided to quit our jobs and start a business of our own with, of course, a 6-month-old baby.
My goodness. What happened in your heads?
Long story short, we got into the travel business, and then I started getting a lot of people reaching out to me asking for help with immigration. Like They would ask me to help them with express entry. They would ask me, but I knew that we couldn't do it because we were only licensed to practice travel. We couldn't really do immigration. Mm-hmm. So then I researched about it, and my journey started in 2015. When I decided that I'm going to do my course and then I'm going to do my license with 2 young kids at that time, because I had my second child too 3 years later. So, with 2 young kids, by the time I finished my course and did my exam, the licensing exam, and then starting out my business. Now I've been successfully running TDOT Immigration Services in Toronto for the last 3.5 years.
All right. So you are the founder of TDOT Immigration Services in Toronto, and you have started it, so we'll say about, 3-4 years ago?
About 3.5 years ago. That's right. In 2018.
All right. So just to tell you, our listeners, that you are then a fully licensed, regulated Canadian immigration consultant. So you are well known in the business.
That's true. I am a licensed immigration consultant, licensed by the ICCRC, and I've been fully practicing all areas of Canadian immigration except refugees.
Oh, okay. So just tell me, for my curiosity, why did you really choose immigration? I understand you had a lot of inquiries about immigration, but did you have any other motivation for you to make the decision to go to the immigration? Because you already had a business in the travel industry.
So I, myself being an immigrant, my husband being an immigrant, we ourselves went through that entire process, that entire cycle of coming here on work permits, study permits, work permits, then permanent residence, and then citizenship. So we've gone through that entire cycle, and I know how overwhelming it could be. And with the clients that I would, with the people who would reach out to me to ask for help, I could see that they were really looking for help, and they couldn't find anybody who they could trust. we know that in this industry, there are a lot of, bad apples, as I can say, or
Yes.
unauthorized consultants that do bring a bad name to the entire community, right? So I did feel at that time that people genuinely needed help from honest consultants who could really help them and would not mint money out of their misery. And I think that was my biggest motivation.
All right. So your motivation really was to help people.
Absolutely. And even right now, I get all my clients that I work with. My ultimate goal is to get them success. Of course, money. I'm not doing it for charity. Of course, money is always that motivation behind the work, but money is not the first. Like, money is always on the back burner. It's more to get them success in this industry. In their goals in life.
Perfect. This is excellent. It's about the same thing. I'm an immigrant myself, so I went through the same process. But when I came here, I came myself with no spouse, but I had to undergo the same process. And along the way, when I was doing mine, and I was at the same time helping people, my friends who had issues, who couldn't really figure out the stuff. So somehow I could understand all the forms and all the processes more easily than some of them. So I got to help them, and this is how we got into this. So it's actually the desire of helping our compatriots, our people, to help them go forward and reach their goal. I totally, yeah.
I'll share, if I'm not taking too much time, I'll just share something that happened.
No, you go ahead.
2 days ago. It was something that really brought me a lot of joy.
Okay.
I was very happy. I mean, every approval gives me happiness, absolutely. And every refusal also gives me the same amount of disappointment. But this case specifically was very close to my heart, because this lady came to me a few months ago, very upset and very, in a very sort of a difficult situation. Okay. She had 2 teenage kids, one of whom is a high spectrum autistic child, okay. And then the other was obviously a teenage girl. And she came to Canada from her country, and she lived here. She went to school, but then her turmoil started in 2019 when her postgraduate work permit expired, and she didn't have anything else. Like, she didn't have the right guidance. She didn't know what to do. She tried to apply for a postgraduate work permit, which got refused, because obviously you can never extend your postgraduate work permit. And then I think she went to another consultant, and that consultant offered her to do an LMI for her.
Okay.
Apparently that consultant, and she was happy about it. She was like, okay, finally I'll get to do a work permit. It was her own employer who was willing to do the entire process for her. But I mean, the things just took too long. Finally, in 2021, and I think about February, she came to me saying, I'm in a very difficult situation. My husband and I, we have no money. Like, we're living off our savings from back home. We can't work here. I'm on like an implied visitor extension status. What do I do? So I assessed her, and I created her express entry profile. We got her an ITA because the times were good. She had a 1-year experience. So she got an ITA, and we submitted her PR application. In the meantime, the other consultant that she was working for that consultant reached out to her and told her, oh, after 1.5 years, the LMI is approved. So she got a copy of the LMI from him, and she's like, I don't want to wait another 1 year to get my work permit approved. Can you help me with the work permit? So I said, okay, bring your LMI. We're going to apply for your work permit. Your PR application is in process.
Exactly.
We applied for her work permit and her husband's work permit. It was not a complicated application. We had an LMI. She was always in status. But finally, when she got approved, that joy, that moment when I called her, and I'm like, now
I can relate. I can relate.
It's that joy is beyond comprehension. Like, there are no words to explain.
Exactly. That is what drives us. What you see, how you are able to actually help people. It's materialized. So
Exactly.
I can totally relate. So today we are going to discuss about a program that is dear to your heart as well. As you say, it's something that you like, the Canadian Experience class. So I would like to ask you to start. What is it? What is the program, Canadian Experience class under the Federal Skilled Worker Program? What is it? What can you tell us about it?
So basically, Canadian Experience class is another arm under the Express Entry. So we have a program called Express Entry, and then there are three arms to it. There's Canadian Experience class, there's Federal Skilled Worker, and then there's a Federal Skilled Trade. Canadian Experience class is specifically for people who have come to Canada on any kind of status, whether it's a work permit or a study permit, and then eventually got a work permit, and who have worked in Canada for at least 12 months, 52 weeks, and 1560 hours in that 12 months.
Okay.
If in a NOC O, A or B position, and in layman terms, I'd say a skilled position. Okay. Low skilled and semi-skilled positions are not included under Express Entry, but skilled positions such as, office jobs, supervisory positions, IT jobs, positions in the, I'd say the, supervisors of the service industry.
Okay.
So any management position or office positions that are considered as skilled jobs, and there's a whole list of NOC codes available on the Government of Canada's website. If you have done at least 1 year of job in Canada legally, if you were authorized to do that job and you work for 1560 hours, 30 hours per week, a person can apply for permanent residence in Canada under Canadian Experience class.
Okay, so anyone who is in Canada who has experience at least 12 months, 1 year, 52 weeks, 1560 hours, skilled work can apply under that program.
As long as that work was legal and authorized.
Qualified. Yes. Okay, all right. So some people complain, they say that the Canadian Experience class program is kind of hard to achieve. To achieve the PR under that program. What can you say about that?
I personally don't think that it's hard, but what I do agree agree to some extent is that the threshold, the English language threshold ability that Canada expects, and on basis of which the points are assigned, definitely is very high. There are many people from other countries, non-English speaking countries, that usually are not able to compete, with people from English speaking countries or countries where English is a prevalent language. For example, in India, right? In India and Pakistan, we grew up learning English. So for us to get a higher score in the English proficiency or the English testing is not as difficult as compared to somebody who's probably coming from Russia, for example. Okay. Right? Because they're not exposed to English language as much. Or for example, even China. Yeah. Yes, Chinese do speak English, but again, they don't learn English right from the start, right? So, but again, I think to that extent, yes. Okay. But again, it's an economic program, right? And you compete. And what our immigration, the whole idea of this program is that government wants the best of the world in Canada. Exactly. They want people, the best brain from all over the country, the world, to come to Canada so that they can contribute to the Canadian economy. Even in our day-to-day life, it's always the survival of the fittest, right? You have to compete every single day. Sometimes you compete with yourself. Sometimes you compete with your peers. Exactly. Sometimes you compete for permanent residence in Canada, right? So you always have to try and make yourself better at it so that you can compete with the rest of the world. All right. So because there is a competition, then people need obviously to be prepared. Now, what do you think people should be doing, potential candidates should be doing to prepare themselves for the competition so that they can be successful? What should they be doing? See, the first and foremost thing I think is, first of all, assess what are the grounds on which one can score points. There are some things that we cannot do anything about. For example, age. Whatever our age is our age. We can't change that. So we can't change the points for that, right? Things like education. I mean, yes, to some extent it is in our control, but then a lot of times it takes a long time to get to that point. Like, for example, somebody who's done a bachelor's will get less points than somebody who's probably done a master's.
Okay.
Right? But to get to a master's degree, it'll probably take somebody 1 to 2 years, right?
A couple of years.
So again, I wouldn't say that this is something that again is in our control. I mean, education is something. I mean, if you're really in a rush to submit, like if you really want to immigrate like tomorrow, then you can't really work on your education. Whatever you have is what you have, and you only get points for that. Things that you can change are your language. You can change, so you can work hard to get a better score on the IELTS or the CELPIP test that is accepted. You can work on your work experience, obviously work
more,
additional years, maybe another year to add up to your points. French is another thing that people can spend time on.
Yes.
Because now with the government making all those changes, in fact, that happened just last year during COVID only, that people with both English and French proficiency were getting 50 additional points.
Exactly.
A maximum of 50 additional points. So people can start working on French ability as well, right? It's always good to learn a language. And if people have time, they can learn the language, and maybe that can help them in, increasing the score in express entry. Another thing people can do is always find an employer in Canada. Now, when I say find an employer in Canada, I do not mean pay an employer.
Very important to mention that. Yes.
Yes, please.
Very
so
important.
Please, we should never be buying jobs.
Yes.
There is a market for those, for the jobs are being sold because there's somebody who's willing to buy it.
If there's no buyers,
right? Yeah. So if we want to put an end to that, practice, we need to put our foot down that, no, I'm not going to pay, because I shouldn't have to pay for a job, right? I'm going to work for you. So why are you charging me money for it? So, okay. So coming back to the real thing, you can find a job that can get you 50 additional points in the express entry. So those things really boost up the scores.
All right. So maybe I want to go back a little bit because we didn't mention it. So express entry is actually a point-based system. So people gain points and then they become eligible to apply. Can you explain pretty quickly how does one gain points? We already mentioned a couple of things like the age and language abilities and all that. But can you go back, just try to make it a little bit more plain and simple for somebody who never heard about this program before?
Sure. So as I said in my previous conversation, that express entry is an economic program, and it's a point-based program. So what happens is that government assesses your profile based on certain factors, and those factors are your age, your education, your language ability. Now, language, Canada has 2 official languages. They will assess you either on your proficiency in English or your proficiency in French. How do they do that? You have to do a test. So for English, it's IELTS and CELPIP. There are 2 tests that are accepted. And then for French, there's TEF, and there's another one.
TCF Canada.
Exactly. So there are 2 tests that you can do for French. So depending on your CLB level, which is the Canadian language benchmark for that proficiency, based on that, you are assigned points. Then there's points for work experience. If you have worked in Canada, you 1 year, so you get 40 points for 1 year experience, 53 points for 2 years experience, and so on and so forth. Then you get points for, you could get points for job offer in Canada. If you have an employment in Canada, you could get additional points if you have siblings in Canada. You could get additional points if you have Canadian education. So if you've done a 1 year or 2 year program, like a post-secondary program, or a 3 year or a 2 year master's or a bachelor's degree in program in Canada. So you could get additional points for those. But the fixed factors that you will get points for are age, language, and education. especially language. If you haven't done the test, the language test, which is the English or the French test, then you cannot even create your profile. You can't even go into the pool. So I think as a prep work to get started, the first thing to do is to do your IELTS exam.
All right.
So get your language results in so that you know exactly where you stand.
All right. So because you have so much experience, Shafoli, I want to ask you, what kind of common mistakes do you see when people, or when you're helping people preparing for the Express Entry program?
Oh, well, there are various mistakes that I see all the time, but then that's also because I deal with people, with international students who have a lot of information about the program already, right? Because they hear from their friends. There's so much information available on the internet now. Yeah. So those students already know, but even then I do come across a lot of mistakes that they do. For example, like I said, Express Entry is, you only get points in Express Entry for work done in skilled work. Like, if you have skilled experience. I see people who will add all their semi-skilled and low-skilled jobs as well in the work history section. As a result, when you're actually submitting your documentation, the system is going to ask you every single document, like for all the jobs that you've done. But I always tell my clients, why will you give so much documentation when you're not even getting points for that?
It's not necessary.
It's not necessary. You only mention about jobs. Again, not trying to lie, not telling you to hide anything. There will come a point in that application process where you will be able to disclose all your other semi-skilled and low-skilled jobs.
The work history.
For the purpose of the profile, we're only going to talk about jobs that are going to get you points.
Okay, so it is not necessary for you that are listening to us to give information about low-skilled work for which you are not gaining points. That is a mistake. It's a waste of time because you'll be.
It's a waste of. I wouldn't say it's a mistake. You'll not be penalized for it, but it's just waste of time. It's additional work. When I submit an application under, under Express Entry or any permanent residence application, I have one goal, and my goal is to simplify the application as much as possible so that it's very easy for the visa officer to comprehend it. We need to provide a story to the visa officer. The visa officer doesn't know you. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know the client. What he knows is through the documentation. He's sitting in a room and reviewing the documents. And if there's no story there, he's going to make a story of his own. And we can't control that because the ball is in the visa officer's court, right?
Yes.
So what I like to do is I like to make my application simple. Straightforward, crisp information, so that when the visa officer looks at the application, they're like, okay, this meets requirement, this meets requirement, this meets requirement. Perfect. I don't have to build a story. The person has provided me a story and move on.
Okay, so let's say that someone decides not to go with a consultant like yourself or myself. By the way, if you need us to help you, you need Shafoli to help you, feel free to contact her. We will be putting contact information in the description page below on our YouTube. But for you listeners, you can contact Shafoli. Please, I'll let you, Shafoli, give your email address and phone number where you want to be contacted, because obviously people will want to talk to you to help them.
Thank you so much, Eddy, for giving me that opportunity on your platform. The best way to contact me is via phone. Emails, I'm very poor in responding to because I'm always dealing with a whole bunch of applications through the day. But the best number to reach my office is 416-947-6710. You could either call my office or you could also reach us on WhatsApp of this number. So we're very responsive on calls and WhatsApp. Emails, I'm a little slow.
All right, perfect, understood. So we will still put that information. You will be able to read it and take note. And please feel free to contact Shafoli or to contact ourselves here, Eddy Balambula at BalCAN Immigration Services, for assistance. So now that brings me to my next question. I was going to ask you, if somebody decides that, maybe I don't have money to pay a consultant, I want to do this myself. And now, what advice would you help that person to try and tell the story and be effective, but still succeed his or her application. What can you say, Pradeep?
So before I come to what advice I have, I will first come to the point that so first of all, immigration is no rocket science. We all know that.
Yes.
Most of the cases are straightforward. As long as you're eligible for a certain program, anybody can apply for it. It's no rocket science. If I can do it,
you can do it.
I can do it, right? But of course, there are some cases where you need professional advice because some cases are complicated. For example, if you've ever been out of status in Canada, then you need a little bit of explanation to the visa officer to make sure you're not inadmissible and stuff like that. But whenever I have clients in the office, this is what I always tell them. So everybody can do their application again, but there are two situations where you should not do your application yourself. Okay. The first, if you're underconfident. If you're underconfident and if you think that you will panic until you have your COPR, oh, did I fill this wrong? Oh, did I do that wrong? Then don't do it, because unnecessarily you're going to ruin the next 6 months of your life.
That is stressful.
Well, give your file to somebody so that person, and I get those clients all the time. Okay. Some of my clients want to work with me only because they don't want to continue, because they log into their account 20 times a day just to see, is the biometrics updated? Are the medicals done? So those are the perfect clients who need somebody to do their application so that they don't have any access to
they don't have the headache, they don't have the stress.
Exactly. Yes. Because it's unnecessarily going to give them stress, which is not required. Yes. The second type of people who should not do that application themselves is people who don't have time.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. Because immigration, it is straightforward, it's not complicated, but it's time consuming. Because you want to make sure that everything that you've given is accurate, all the information, because even a small mistake could result in serious consequences. Yes. We've seen in the past, during the TR to PR pathway program, there were numerous applicants who forgot to mention their refusals from the past. Right? And it's easy to forget. And there's a lot of consequences for them, right? So, because, they forget in that moment. They're just so excited to do the application. I get clients who get ITA today and they're like, can I submit the application tomorrow? Why? There's a reason why immigration gave you 60 days. Yes. Right? Okay, I'm not saying let's take 60 days, but why not take 1 more week? Like, why tomorrow? Because if you rush into an application, there is more likelihood that you're going to make mistakes. Definitely. There's more and once you click that submit button, you can go back. It's done. It's submitted. And then after the fact, okay, some people will say, oh, but we can fix that through web form. Well, after the application is submitted, it is totally up to the visa officer if he wants to accept any additional information. Most of the visa officers do. But then what if you come across a visa officer who doesn't want to? What do you do then?
You're stuck.
So it is your one shot at it. Make it your best. So these are my 2 advice to people who try to do it themselves. Don't get anxious. It's not rocket science, and take your time. There's no race. You don't submit it today, you submit it a week later. The outcome is going to be the same, maybe even better. Our listeners, you see how Shafoli is a very good storyteller. We will definitely have her back to talk about more other immigration programs. Unfortunately, we are getting to hand this episode. This is just our first with Shafoli. She will be back, I promise you that. But before I let her go, before we end this episode today, I would like to ask her maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Shafoli, now, what can you say about the mistakes that you see, not only specific to the Canadian experience class, but through the immigration, the process of coming to Canada? What common mistakes do you come across that people make a lot? Because again, we are trying to help them, even if they do not retain our services, so that they can be successful in what they do. So maybe just something that you think. There are many, you know what, because and I'm sure you'll agree, our profession is very similar to the medical profession, right? Not the same situation applies to everybody, just like
Definitely.
Not the same medicine works for everybody. It's the same thing for us, not the same. We come across unique situations day in, day out. Even with visa officers, we'll see that they approve one application of one kind, but then the same kind of application, another visa officer will refuse, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of things, so immigration is very subjective and then objective. But then where it is subjective, there's not much clarity on how, and it's not only for immigration, it's also for temporary resident applications like study permits. Like, when the visa officer gets down to that subjective analysis of the application, we don't know what he's going to think, because they do, like, although we hear this all the time that they don't apply biases or preconceived notions, but it's not true, because at the end of the day, it's a human being who's processing the application.
Yeah.
No matter how much they try, they will use their own biases and they will use their own perception of the documentation that they have in front of them. So, of course, there's no similar thing. But just from the top of my head, a few things that I'll tell you is when the documentation is not complete, people think that providing just very limited documentation will help, right? But I think differently. I think the more documents you provide to the visa officer to make your application comprehensive, it only helps you. Adding additional extra documentation to prove your point, to get you the approval, it doesn't harm. I see a lot of times people will make very little mistakes. Although I know today's episode is about Canadian experience class, but I see federal skilled workers. We must have heard recently that the fund requirements have changed recently, right? Yes. People are supposed to update their express entry profiles with the new funds. If they don't update their profiles, their profiles will become eligible on 16th of July. Right, because the new fund requirement go effective on 15th July. So I see that sometimes people will, will submit an application with proof of funds, but just exactly the same amount of money that they need as a requirement. But then because of the fluctuation rate in the currency, sometimes the value of their money goes down, and that's one mistake. With education assessment, I see sometimes people have got their education assessment done, but it's not for IRCC. If your education report doesn't say IMM at the end, don't use that, because that's not for immigration. A report has not been delivered to IRCC. You need to first go onto the Education Assessment Agency's website and get a report electronically delivered to IRCC. Otherwise, that report will not be considered like a report that is meant for immigration. So immigration will refuse your application.
Definitely. Wow.
Your reference letters, they need to be on point. The job duties. People make so many mistakes in picking up their knock code. I think choosing your right knock is an art. I love looking at knock codes, but I think it's an art. A lot of people are not able to decide their knock. So take your time. Spend time on looking at your knock. Make sure that you do fall. Majority of the duties that you perform fall under that knock, because if they don't and the visa officer is not convinced, the visa officer will refuse your application, because express entry is all about knock codes. You have to fall under category O, A, or B to be eligible for express entry. So if you're not in one, if the visa officer is not convinced you fall under one of those three categories, the skill levels, they'll refuse your application.
And I'll tell you what, Shafoli, I think we will make one episode talking about the knock code. I'm really happy you talk about that. We will try and make an episode specifically about knock code to try and help as many as we can. Unfortunately, this is the time that we had today for this first episode. I know we have a lot to say, and our listeners want to hear more about us. And you know what? We're going to be doing this on purpose so that they can come back, right? We're going to keep them on the leash, Shafoli. I would like to take the time to thank you so very, very much for accepting, for being in this program. This is the first episode with you, but certainly not the last. And what do you have to say just to close this episode today?
I really enjoyed being here. I wouldn't say I was nervous. I'm usually not somebody who's camera conscious, but in general, I was. I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't prepared. I'll be very honest. I'm saying it on record. I didn't even make notes. Everything that we've talked about right now is so impromptu. It has come naturally. And I'm very happy of how this whole thing went. And I do look forward to your future episodes.
Excellent. So we thank you very much. Please, a reminder for you guys listening to us today. This is Shafoli Kapur, regulated Canadian immigration consultant. You can reach out to her at t.dot immigration services.com, and she gave her phone number. Do not hesitate. You know how knowledgeable she is. You've heard her, so please contact her. Do not hesitate. You can contact us too for any immigration services that you will require. We will be happy to help you. We are here to provide you with assistance because we want to invest in you because you matter. Thank you for listening, and we shall talk to you soon.